Dungeon Reaper. A light novel by Bloodmoss. Chapter 2. The Ride to Glory. The rain drummed steadily against the van's roof, a rhythm that might have been soothing if the vehicle wasn't careening around corners like a roller coaster operated by a caffeine-addled squirrel. Kain gripped the edge of his seat, knuckles white, as the blonde woman behind the wheel laid on the horn again. "Move it, you glorified speed bump," she barked at a sedan crawling through the intersection ahead. The van fishtailed slightly as she accelerated through a yellow light, prompting a sharp look from the man in the passenger seat. "Serena," the tank grumbled, his voice low and gravelly. "It's raining." "And your point is?" she shot back, glaring at him briefly before cutting off a delivery truck with a precision that could only come from years of reckless driving. Kain, wedged in the middle row, was already regretting his life choices. Again. Beside him, a pale man in loose robes nursed a cup of coffee, his bleary eyes barely open. The smell of cheap caffeine and stale alcohol wafted from him like an aura. "You okay there, Doc?" Kain asked, leaning slightly away. The man grunted, taking another sip. "Define okay." "Alive?" "Debatable." In the back of the van, the assassin lounged as though he were on a tropical vacation, one leg stretched across the seat, a dagger spinning lazily in his hand. He hadn't said a word since Kain got in but radiated an unsettling calm, as though he already knew how the day would end and found it amusing. Kain cleared his throat, glancing around the crowded vehicle. "So, 6 people? I thought dungeon teams were 5. "Good catch, genius," Penny said from the passenger seat's headrest, where she'd been hanging like a restless cat. She swung around to face him, her auburn hair bouncing as she smirked. "I'm not going. Drob's got a thing about minors and dungeons." "You're a minor?" Kain asked, eyebrows raised. "You're not, 12, are you?" Penny's brother, the tank, Griffin, snapped his head around to glare at Kain, his eyes narrowing to predatory slits. Penny laughed, slapping her knee. "Wow, bold move, newbie. I'm 19. 2 more years before I can officially get my face melted in a dungeon. For now, I'm just here for the paperwork and to make sure you don't screw it up too badly." "Great," Kain muttered, slumping into his seat. "A human clipboard." "Exactly," Penny said cheerfully. "Now, speaking of which," she unhooked herself from the headrest and clambered into the back row, pulling a tablet from her jacket. "Let's get your deets in the system, rookie." As Penny tapped away on her device, Griffin growled something under his breath. The next thing Kain knew, the assassin, who had been enjoying his dagger-spinning zen, was unceremoniously shoved aside, replaced by a wall of armor and muscle. Griffin wedged himself into the seat beside Kain, so close their shoulders touched. "Don't get comfortable," Griffin rumbled, his voice low enough to rattle bones. "And don't talk to my sister." "I'm not." "You're not what?" Griffin interrupted, looming over Kain like a thundercloud. Penny leaned forward, grin wide. "Don't mind him. He gets twitchy whenever someone looks at me for more than 3 seconds. Ignore the size, he's basically a giant toddler." "Shut up, Penny," Griffin snapped, but his ears turned red. "Can I switch seats with someone?" Kain asked, already knowing the answer. "Nope," Penny said, popping the P. She shoved the tablet under his nose. "Now, your address? Emergency contact? Blood type? Shoe size? Favorite pizza topping?" "Just kidding." "Sort of. Is this necessary right now?" Kain asked as he squirmed, trying to escape Griffin's looming presence. Penny's grin widened. "Paperwork waits for no one." Kain sighed, glancing at the rain-streaked window, then at Griffin, who was still glowering at him menacingly. "And neither does death." Griffin's eyes narrowed further before he let out a short, gravelly chuckle. "You got that right, rookie." The van lurched again, throwing Kain forward as Serena narrowly avoided a pothole. From the front seat, she hollered, "If anyone gets carsick, aim for the new guy." Kain sighed again, resigned. It was going to be a long ride. The rain had let up by the time the van skidded to a stop in front of the old church, but the air still carried the fresh, damp scent of a recent downpour. Kain pressed his face to the window, staring at the historic building. Its tall spire reached into the misty sky, its stone walls weathered by centuries, but still standing proud. A faint, otherworldly glow seeped through the cracks in the churchyard gate, illuminating the cobblestone path with an eerie blue light. A smattering of local journalists clustered near the gate, their cameras clicking half-heartedly. Most looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, probably lamenting that an E-rank dungeon was the highlight of their day. Kain didn't care. For him, this wasn't just another dungeon, it was the dungeon, his first real shot at becoming an adventurer. "This is it," he muttered under his breath, heart pounding. His hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with the door handle. Griffin opened his door with a loud creak, shaking his head as if reading Kain's mind. "Relax, rookie," Griffin grunted as he stepped out of the van, his boots splashing in a shallow puddle. "Try not to look so excited. It's just a gate." Kain jumped out after him, nearly slipping on the wet cobblestones. "Just a gate? This is my first dungeon. Do you know how long I've waited for this?" Griffin grumbled something under his breath, but Serena cut in as she slammed the driver's side door shut. Yeah, big day for you. For us, it's just Tuesday." "I'm serious," Kain said, his grin wide and genuine as he stared at the glowing portal. "I've read every guide, watched every tutorial. I've got this." "That's what they all say," Serena replied, smirking as she adjusted her daggers. "Then we're scraping them off the floor halfway through." Penny hopped out last, yawning as she stretched her arms overhead. "Try not to prove her right, newbie. Cleaning up after noobs is exhausting, and I am not filing another casualty report." Kain rolled his eyes, but his grin didn't falter. He couldn't bring himself to feel insulted, not when he was standing this close to a dungeon gate. The glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, promising danger and adventure in equal measure. He stared at it, breathless. "Focus up," Griffin barked, clapping his hands loudly. The team stopped milling around and turned toward him, their expressions sharpening. Kain hesitated before shuffling closer, wedging himself awkwardly between the assassin, who was still silent, and Doc, who looked like he might fall asleep standing up. "What's happening?" Kain whispered. "Pre-run pep talk," Doc muttered, barely lifting his head. "Just listen." Serena stepped forward, her usual smirk replaced by a rare, serious expression. She crossed her arms, her daggers glinting faintly in the rain-dappled light. "We all should know," her gaze flicked pointedly to Kain, "that even though thousands of gates have been closed worldwide, no one is exactly sure how they appear or why they appear. DRB assures us this is an E-class gate, but that's based solely on the size and the color. They could be wrong." The words hung heavy in the air, and for the first time, Kain noticed the subtle tension in everyone's posture. Even the assassin had stopped twirling his blade, his expression unreadable. Serena's voice softened, but her tone carried a weight that made Kain's chest tighten. "They've been wrong before. Sometimes disastrously so. Be ready for anything. It might not be goblins and spiders waiting for us on the other side. It could be something worse." A chill ran down Kain's spine, but he stood a little straighter as Serena's gaze swept over the group. "Stay together. Stay focused. Watch each other's backs." And most importantly, she locked eyes with Griffin for emphasis. "If things go south, get the fuck out. No loot, no pride, no heroics. Just out." The group nodded, their somber expressions betraying no hesitation. Kain felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The reality of what he was walking into began to creep in, dulling the edge of his excitement. From behind him, Penny broke the silence with a snort. "Good speech, boss. Inspirational, really." Serena rolled her eyes and turned back toward the gate, grabbing her gear without another word. Griffin hefted his shield and moved to follow her. Penny leaned casually against the van, clearly in no rush to join them. "Don't worry, rookie. I'll be right here, cheering you on. And by cheering, I mean eating your cold pizza if you don't make it back." Kain smirked weakly, trying to muster his earlier enthusiasm. "What makes you think I won't make it?" Penny raised an eyebrow, her smirk returning. Optimism's cute, rookie. I'd give you 20 minutes tops. 25, Serena called from the gate, smirking. If he hides behind Griffin. Can we not do this in front of the gate? Griffin rumbled, hefting his massive shield. Let's move. The others began filing toward the gate, and Kain took a deep breath, gripping the straps of his overstuffed bags. His earlier excitement warred with the creeping unease in his gut. Stay together. Stay focused, he muttered under his breath, repeating Serena's words as he followed the others toward the swirling light. His shoulders sagged under the weight of the 2 overstuffed supply bags strapped across his back. The straps dug into his shoulders with each shift of his posture, and the 3 empty loot bags hanging from his hands swung precariously with every step. He already felt like a pack mule, and they hadn't even entered the dungeon yet. Why do I have to carry all this? Kain grumbled, adjusting the straps for the 3rd time. Newbie tax, Serena said without missing a beat as she tightened her bracers. You carry the gear, we carry you. Fair trade. Fair trade, Mage. Kain bit his tongue when Griffin shot him a warning glance, his shield slung casually across his back. The big man could probably carry everything Kain had, and then some, without breaking a sweat. Doc yawned, sipping from a small flask before tucking it into his robes. He looked at Kain with half-lidded eyes. Think of it as training. Builds character. Or breaks your spine. One of the two. Kain muttered something under his breath, earning a chuckle from the assassin, who had already begun idly sharpening a blade. At the front of the group, Serena paced toward the glowing portal, checking the straps on her twin daggers. You've got about 30 seconds to stop whining, rookie. Once we're in there, you'd better keep up. The gate stood just ahead, its swirling energy casting a bluish hue on the wet cobblestones. The faint whispers emanating from the portal seemed to grow louder as the group approached, an eerie, almost melodic sound that made Kain's skin prickle. He tried to suppress the shiver running down his spine, but the ominous glow didn't help. Each member of the team took their turn stepping through the portal. Serena went first, her confident stride never faltering as she vanished into the swirling vortex. Griffin followed, his shield held ready as if expecting something to leap out. Doc shuffled in next, still looking like he was on the verge of a nap, and the assassin moved with a quiet, almost predatory grace, as though he didn't trust the portal not to bite him on the way in. Then it was Kain's turn. He stood there for a moment, staring into the glowing blue depths. Up close, the whisper seemed louder, forming words he couldn't quite make out. The light danced and flickered, almost alive, and he could feel the faint hum of its energy vibrating in his chest. This was it. The culmination of everything he had worked for. Every rejection letter, every dead-end job, every sneer and condescending glance from guild recruiters had led him here. The doubt that had haunted him for so long wavered, just for a moment, as a flicker of pride crept in. He'd made it. Finally. Kain gripped the straps of his bags tightly, taking a deep breath. Okay, he muttered. No turning back. From behind him, Penny's voice cut through the moment. Any day now, rookie. You're holding up the line. Kain grinned, the tension breaking just slightly. He glanced back at her, still leaning casually against the van. See you on the other side. Don't die too quickly, Penny replied, smirking. Remember, you've got 20 minutes. With one last glance at the swirling gate, Kain squared his shoulders and stepped forward. The whispers grew into a crescendo as the light engulfed him, and then everything went silent. The moment Kain stepped through the glowing gate, he felt his breath leave him. The air changed thicker, charged with energy that pressed against his chest like an invisible hand. Then, everything went wrong. Light exploded from the ground beneath him, a column of fire that swallowed him whole. Pain shot through his body, sharp and searing, as a bolt of lightning cracked from above, slamming into his chest and tearing through muscle and bone. He didn't even have time to process the agony before something else, a flash of metal, sliced through his waist with horrifying precision. There was a split second of silence as his body gave way, and the world tilted sharply. The next thing he knew, he was flying backward, his vision spinning. His upper half hit the cobblestones with a sickening thud, the impact rattling through what remained of him. He lay on his back, staring up at the rain-soaked sky. His vision flickered, shadows dancing at the edges as droplets pattered on his face. Somewhere near the portal, lightning crackled, the arc snapping wildly as the gate stabilized, its energy pulsing with an almost sinister rhythm. Blood pooled quickly beneath him, its warmth seeping into the cobblestones as steam rose into the cold air. He didn't need to look down to know his lower half was gone. This searing emptiness told him enough. The smell of charred flesh and iron filled his nose, mingling with the dampness of the rain. He tried to move, to reach out, but his arms felt like lead. A sound cut through the haze, a scream, raw and desperate. Kain. The voice was familiar, sharp and fierce even in its panic. Penny. He couldn't see her, but he could hear her, each word punching through the growing fog in his mind. Let me go. He might still. There was a struggle, boots scraping on stone, muted shouts. Kain imagined her trying to run toward him, arms flailing, fighting off whatever was holding her back. Her voice cracked, rising in pitch. He might still be alive. The desperation in her words twisted something deep in his chest. He wanted to call out, to reassure her, to tell her it was okay. But his lips barely moved, and no sound came. The world around him grew dimmer, colors bleeding into one another like an unfocused painting. The pain began to fade, not because it was gone, but because he was. Kain's head lolled to the side, rain dripping into his eyes as he caught sight of the gate. It pulsed faintly, almost content, like it had claimed its due. He couldn't even bring himself to hate it. Somewhere behind him, Penny's voice grew quieter, muffled by the roar in his ears. He imagined her face, angry, tear-streaked, fighting as hard as he'd tried to. Guess. I made it inside, he thought, a weak smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Kind of. The rain felt oddly soothing now, the cool drops washing away the heat and the blood. His vision narrowed to a single point of light, flickering like a distant star. And then, there was nothing.